Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town. Oh, the butcher and the baker and the people on the streets, where do they go? To meet the Mets! Oh, they're hollering and cheering and they're jumping in their seats. Where do they go? To meet the Mets! All the fans are true to the orange and blue, so hurry up and come on down, 'cause we got ourselves a ball club, the Mets of New York town. Give 'em a yell, give 'em a hand, and let 'em know you're rooting in the stand. Come on and meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another Mets Talk Live right here on Talkin Mets at Rob. Hopefully everybody is enjoying themselves right now, and happy second half of baseball as the New York Mets start their second half in Miami for four games against the Miami Marlins. And as you can see, there's a lot of TBDs for pitchers in game 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, there isn't a guarantee that Luis Severino is going to start tomorrow, but I'm kind of thinking, since he hasn't pitched in a while, he'll get the nod for game 1 against the Miami Marlins. So that's just me. I'm just, foreshadowing a little bit when it comes to the pitching, but I do think Luis Severino is going to get game 1 tomorrow, because you can really set up your rotation however you like out of the All-Star break, since everybody got all types of rest, and nobody except for Pete Alonso was an all-star, so you don't have to worry about, or especially pitchers, having to worry about getting rest. So the good news is that we can have our top guys going against the Miami Marlins, and it's time to beat up on more bad teams. That's what the New York Mets have to do. They got to jump out of the second half rolling. They have to keep that momentum rolling, because it all will be for nothing if they don't finish the job. We talked about this, right? You played a tremendous amount of games already. You're basically almost at 100 games. You got about 70 odd-on games to go. These are the games that really matter. When the pressure is on and everything, all eyes are on you, this is the time that you have to take care of business and do your job. This goes for everybody. This goes from the 26 men on the roster to numero uno on the roster. That is what they have to do. It's got to be the same thing we know about the bullpen. We have to wait until we start really getting into the news and rumors about bullpen and more bullpen and more bullpen. But as of right now, it's looking like Shore Foley is going to be back on this roster very, very shortly. He's going to help the bullpen. We already got Budo in there. We already got Hauser in there. We already got Nunez in there. Danny Young's in there. Diaz is in there, right? That is a start. But there's in my estimation, there's at least 2 more arms that need to be had at the trade deadline or around the trade deadline or whenever Stearns thinks it's a good time to pull the trigger on a bullpen. You could say now, but who knows if that's really going to happen at the moment, even though it is after the All-Star break, right? Hunter Harvey was traded from the Nationals to the Royals. And before anybody starts to go crazy and everybody wants a bullpen arm, Hunter Harvey, who is, I wouldn't say he's an A reliever, but he's pretty damn good, right? He's probably just under that A reliever. He got a number 2 prospect in the Royals system. That is the premium for bullpen arms, right? 2 years ago, it was premiums for bats. Last year, it was a premium for starting pitching. This year, the premium is bullpen. So if you got bullpen arms available, every team that needs a bullpen arm is going to pay a premium. And Hunter Harvey got a 2nd overall prospect in the Royal system. So everybody can talk about whoever they want. I talked about Carlos Estevez of the Angels, Tanner Scott of the Marlins. These guys are going to cost a premium. And this is why I wanted to start with the bullpen arms and the trade discussion, because we do have a lot to talk about in the second half, right? Is Pete Alonso going to have the second half of the ages and really carry the team that I've been talking about that he has not done, right? He has not carried this team when it mattered. It's easy to do it in August and September when your team is not in it, or when it's early in the season, and yeah, it's nice to start off good, but when you finish off okay at best, and it really doesn't matter because you're not in it, then who really cares about putting the team on your back when there's no pressure, right? We've seen it. Since the pressure has really been on him, the success of the home run derby, kind of irrelevant to me, but to a lot of people and Pete Alonso, it means something, right? You know, every time you get national audiences on Pete Alonso in regards to the home run derby, right? You hear rumbles, right? We heard that player unanimous vote that Pete Alonso is one of the top 5 overrated players in baseball, and people think he's a doofus, he's a joke, right? Not saying that he's not a great power hitter, but if you're only that, that's fine. But you also have to do it when the moment is bright. And you know, there's been a lot of talk about trade rumors with Pete Alonso. I don't think the Mets are going to trade him. And you listen, you want to get bullpen arms? Trade Pete Alonso, right? I mean, that's kind of an easy way to do it, but I don't think that's going to happen, right? I don't like taking from your major league roster to help other parts of your major league roster. It doesn't make sense. You could talk about all the depth you might have, but you don't want to end up in the end of August with a couple of injuries in your rotation, and now that you traded 1 or 2 arms because you wanted bullpen help, your starting pitching is going to suffer. And great, you have a good bullpen now, but you have to get to that good bullpen. And I think people to continue to not realize this is that you have to worry about going all in, half in, or don't go in at all. These are the 3 things that we have to discuss when it comes to David Stearns, right? We heard a lot of rumors from reporters, kind of a little bit of hints here and there with David Stearns that he might trade from the major league roster to help the major league roster in other areas. I don't think that's a good way to go about it. I think it's a dangerous way to go about it. And the reason why I say that is because of what I just said, right? You're going to take away from your depth to help something in need. Great. Say if the Mets do say, all right, you know what? I'm going to trade Quintana. I think we can get something for Quintana. And what is the interesting thing, what doesn't make any sense, is that a team like the Marlins, right? What do they need Jose Quintana for? Right? He's on an expiring contract. Okay, good. So they don't really get nothing out of him after this year. And who cares if he pitches good for them? They're not going anywhere. And they're not benefiting in the future. So why would they do that? Carlos Estevez for the Angels. Now, I'm not saying Jose Quintana is going to be the only one in that package, but these teams that are not really going anywhere aren't going to take expiring contracts, and it's not really going to help their future. These teams, like the Marlins, the Angels, they're looking for prospects for the present and the future. That's what they're trying to do here. So, and then if you're going to really trade at your Major League roster and, you find a team that's in contention, one team needs starting pitching, the other needs bullpen help. Do you really think teams that are going for it is going to trade out of their Major League roster to get better in another area? It doesn't work like that. It never works like that. That's a half-ass mentality. That is the situation. That is telling me, if David Stearns does that he's not confident enough of trading prospects to make his Major League roster better. Either he doesn't know what he really has in his farm system, or he's too afraid to trade the wrong guy. And I say, who gives a shit? Because I'm sick and tired of being behind the horse and just standing there and waiting for something to happen and think that you're going to half-ass a deadline. Once again, we've seen half-ass deadlines and in 2022, right? You can't half-ass it. It does not work. It absolutely does not work. Yeah, he has to have, look, if he says, you know what, I'm not happy about trading prospects right now because I'm still in that evaluation mode without prospects, and he stays pat, I would respect him more by telling the truth and saying that than saying, well, I'm going to get C-level relievers for, 30th ranked prospects that are never going to make the majors, just to hopefully you hit a couple of lightnings in a bottle there. I don't want to see that either. Like, I mean, I would actually respect that a little bit more, that he would stay pat and saying, listen, I'm still evaluating my top talent or my prospects. I would be okay. I would be mad because I want to help this team. I want to win, but you also got to respect the fact that this guy just got here. And deep down, of course, you don't want to trade the prospect that might be great, right? What if a team asks you, what if the Angels calls us, yeah, we want Jet Williams. What are you going to tell them? You're probably going to say no, right? Yeah, but you want to win now, right? Or do you want C-level bullpen help? The same bullpen help that we've seen over the last couple of months. That's what you're going to get. So that is the issue, and that is the conundrum that David Stearns is going to fall under. That is why Mets fans who want Stearns to just trade for bullpen never really understand how much it's really going to take to actually get good bullpen arms. Again, we already seen what one quality to very good bullpen arm is going to take to get that bullpen arm. Hunter Harvey, from the Washington Nationals to the Kansas City Royals, number 2 overall prospect. Now, he's a very good reliever. I'm not putting him on that A tier, but he's definitely just beneath that A tier. Damn good. A number 2 overall prospect in the Royal system. That's crazy, right? But it's a premium, right? Every year, there seems to be one position, or at least a bat, a starter, a reliever. There's always that area that is a premium for that season. I go back when the Mets won 101 games in 2022. It was the bats that were a premium. Juan Soto, right? Obviously, the Mets decided to get Vogel back and Nate Quinn, and Ruff, right? Last year, it was all about the starting pitching that was a premium. Look at the starting pitchers that got traded, and look how much it cost teams to get that starting pitching. This year, it's seemingly looking like the bullpen is going to be the premium. Ton of teams are going to need bullpen help. Teams that are in contention, look at their bullpens. Not very good. So it's not only that the Mets have to compete, and fight for other relievers and premium relievers against other teams. Those teams that are trading their relievers are going to use one team against another to up the offer. So I tell you this, Met fans, what are you willing to do, right? Everybody knows we need bullpen help. Everybody's been bitching and moaning to get bullpen help. Well, I ask you, what are you willing to give up to get very good to elite bullpen arms in this Mets bullpen? I'm going to cap it at 2 bullpen arms. You can probably get a top, I would say a very good, like a Hunter Harvey. And then you can get maybe a C level, a quality arm. That might not be great, but we'll give you certain spots here and there where he pitches well, but not great. So would you go for one top tier and then a lower tier? Or do you want to go top tier for both? Because this is going to be the issue. What are you willing to give up? In my opinion, I don't really care. Like, you can't say you want to win as a fan, and then when you finally hear, oh, look what it's going to cost you. Oh, no, we can't do that. Well, then you're half-assed in the trade deadline. And all that talk, you didn't put your money where your mouth is. And that's the problem, right? And this is what I've been hearing for the last month with Met fans. They're so sick and tired of the bullpen that they want bullpen arms, but they don't realize what it's going to cost. And then when you hear a trade offer, you back it. Whoa, no, I'm not doing that. Well, why not? Are you trying to win, or was that all talk? Because it doesn't work both ways. And you have to understand that going into this trade deadline. And you know what? There's a pretty good chance we're going to have a roundtable prior to the game tomorrow. It'll be like a special edition roundtable, pregame edition, and talking to hopefully all 4 of us, maybe 3 of us. I think Chris is still on vacation, so he might not be able to join. So if that's the case, then what are you willing to do? So, Frank, yeah, that is an interesting analogy, but I'm not trying to go to that point. Well, yeah, Frank, that's an interesting analogy for sure. Panchich, listen, I agree with you, right? I think you don't build up the farm system just to get all of your farm system or your prospects on your team, on a major league team. It just doesn't work like that. You build your farm system to, yes, use some of them to help your major league roster, but the majority of them you're using to acquire assets, right? Now, what is very interesting about the draft, which is probably going to look very interesting, or to maybe open up some eyes of Met fans, the Mets drafted a ton of college arms, pitchers. Now, some might be starters, some might be relievers. We don't know that yet, but the Heat drafted a ton. I think it was like 11 or 12, maybe even more, arms, starters, relievers, pitchers in this draft, and most of them were college. And what does that tell you? That these guys are going to be quicker up the totem pole and through the farm than a high school kid. So what that's telling me is that David Stearns values pitching prospects. That's my take. He did it with the Brewers, and he's starting to do that with the Mets. Look at the pitching that he's consistently brought up to start and pitching through bullpen, right? Through the Brewers, right? This Brewers team is basically built by David Stearns, the Brewers that you see now, right? Corbin Burns is an Oriole now. He was a Brewer. Peralta, look, I know he's hurt, but look what he's done, right? You can go on and on. Look at their rotation. Look at their bullpen. They've consistently manufactured pitching in their farm system. And I'm going to tell you why that's very smart. Because what I'd like to do, I'd rather put money on a premium bat than a premium arm in free agency. I think it's more trustworthy to pay for a premium bat that could be worth the money than a premium pitch and arm. Because premium pitching isn't a 26-year-old. It is a 30-year-old plus. So what you're paying is what they've done in their past for your present and future. And these guys are 30 plus years old that probably have multiple injuries already or the concern of an injury. And I think the Mets have learned long-term deals should go to the premium bats, not 30 plus premium arms. Because you can develop pitching in your farm. It's going to save you a lot of money, and it's going to give you a lot of money to use on premium bats. I'd rather give the big contract to the premium bats than the premium arms that majority of them that are really good and are premium talent are going to be probably 30 plus years old. And yeah, maybe you'll get lucky with one of them that you sign out of like 3 or 2. And they perform to what you expect, but for how long? Right? So drafting that many pitching arms in the draft this year is showing what David Stearns is valuing in our farm system. Pitching. Develop pitching in your farm. You develop pitching in your farm, look what these pitchers are going for, right? People laughed at the $13 million Severino got after his worst season of his career. Right? Look at the money we gave Sean Manaea. Look at the money we gave Quintana. Right? Average pitching is going between $13 and $17 million. Average. Average pitching is going almost at $20 million. So the premium arms that everybody is going Google Gaga for in this offseason about starting pitching is going to be 25 plus for premium pitching on the free agent market with guys who's had injuries in the past, with guys who are north of 30 or just about to hit 30 and are just going to get older. So you're paying for their past. Stearns is already putting out the blueprint for everybody here, guys. David Stearns is prioritizing pitching in the farm, and he's telling you guys this. Pitching is what we have to develop in the farm more than anything else. A surplus of position prospects, when you already signed Nimmo, you already have Lindor, both guys long-term. So one of the outfield positions and definitely your shortstop position is already off the market. Nobody's replacing them in your farm system. Let's go to Vientos. Seeming like Vientos is going to be the third base of the future, right? As of right now. Things can change. But right now, I think we can pretty much say that Vientos probably got this third base down for at least the time being or the foreseeable future. You have Jet Williams. You have Ronnie Mauricio. You have Brett Batty. And that's only your guys in your top 10. What about the guys in the top 15 to 20 to 30 who are probably infielders as well, right? If Pete Alonso is going to be signed by the Mets, which I still very much question, you got Ryan Clifford, who's played a lot of first base in the minors, who is going to be moved to Double-A very soon. So you got position players, too many position players that are filled up by long-term contracts on your major league team already. Why are you keeping them? Why not show faith, show belief in this team that Stearns and Cohen said multiple times in those interviews in May when the Mets were really struggling? They still believe this is a playoff team. This team has to show us that they can win. Well, you're 2 weeks from the deadline. Now, in these next 2 weeks, the Mets can fall apart, and then the conversation's kind of over. We know what Stearns going to do. Sell, sell, sell. But if they do continue a pretty good streak, I'm not talking about the crazy hot streak over the last 7 weeks, a solid next 2 weeks where they're either in a wild card spot or a half a game, whatever, then you got to do what you got to do. And if Stearns in this draft shows you that he's prioritizing developing pitching, look at all the draft picks. They're mostly pitching. And it's also in not just starters, also probably going to turn into relievers as well. But he drafted a lot of college arms. And that tells me that he prioritizes those pitching prospects more than position players. That's just exactly what he does. That's what he's done with the Brewers. And what he's done with the Brewers, he'll trade for Yelich, then give Yelich a contract. Right? He'll rather sign back. Again, we never seen Stearns with Cohen or even at least a good amount of money available to sign premium bats. The fact is, if he's prioritizing the pitching in the draft and in the farm system and wants to develop pitching, and he thinks that's the best way to save a few dollars in the pitching free agent class, and yeah, you might get a third reliever of, a third type of star, 3 type of starter, or 4, maybe even a 5 on the free agent market. Somebody that'll give you innings, a veteran guy, a 30-plus guy that's not going to cost you $30 million a year, but might cost you 12 to 15, like the Showmanayas, like the Quintanas, like that. So at this deadline, I'm pretty confident. I know I haven't really said that, or it's not making much sense, but David Stearns, I think, probably has about 3 or 4 position player prospects that he's willing to trade for quality to premium bullpen arms. Because if he is believing in his team and he's telling the truth, and he told this team through the media, and if he told them through the media, he probably told them behind closed doors. If you guys do your job and win and make this front office believe, we'll have your back. And remember something, I said this in 2022. If you haven't been with the channel since then, I'm going to talk about this right now. In 2022, there was a perception that team felt disrespected by the front office. The players felt disrespected by the front office because their trade deadline was subpar. We all agree with that. It was subpar. They could have done better. Right? I don't care what anybody says about Josh Bell, JD Martinez, whatever. Those guys are better than Naquin, Ruff, and Vogelback. Regardless of how they performed that year. JD Martinez with the back. Josh Bell didn't perform well with the Padres, even though he hit a home run in the playoffs against us. Those guys, or at least one of them, are better than any of the 3 guys the Mets got, regardless of what the stats say. Some say Vogelback had a decent 2022. Yeah, but it wasn't enough. Right? I don't think it spilled confidence in the team. And I would not be shocked if the subpar September that lost us the division was because this team wasn't very happy with what the front office did. And that's a problem within itself. They should just be professionals and play the game like they've been playing. Well, yeah, you mean I understand. Yeah, it was pathetic, but there was too many Met fans that saying, "Oh, who would you want? Josh Bell, JD Martinez?" Yeah, like just because Josh Bell didn't do well with the Padres doesn't mean he wouldn't have done better with the Mets lineup that statistically in almost every offensive category besides home runs was better than the Padres. So it is possible. It would have been possible. So I go back to now 2024. You can't say through the media that you believe this is a playoff team. This team needs to prove it. And we will make sure we do what we have to do to help this team out, like reinforcements. Can't say that through the media. And over the last couple of weeks, Nimmo, Alonso won the All-Star game in the Homer Derby. Excuse me. What did he say? He says, yeah, he hopes the front office believes in us. They've been outspoken through the media, the players of the Mets, specifically Alonso and Nimmo, that they want something done to help this team. They want reinforcement. And they're all talking about the bullpen. Not directly, but we all know what they mean. So, with that said, it's up to David Stearns now to see, we'll know if he's trying to go after premium to quality above average arms, then he believes in his team. If he's going after them, he's gonna have to give up top talent in the farm system. Who would they be? We can talk about Brett Baty all we want. No Mets fan wants Brett Baty on this team, on this Major League roster. Some say he's a failed prospect. If we believe that, what do you think other teams believe of him? Now, that doesn't mean that you might not find a team that still thinks they have something in Brett Baty, and you might get lucky that way, like the Marlins, who wanted Brett Baty for Luzardo in the offseason. The Mets said no, which I'm not mad at, because Stearns just got here. He's evaluating the players. We all had the assumption that Brett Baty was going to be the third baseman after the Mauricio injury. So to trade a top prospect who was going to be your third baseman going into the opening day, it's kind of hard to trade that and not really have a third baseman, because you couldn't go with Vientos to start the season because nobody really thought he can do that. At least most of us, including myself. So if you go back to the offseason, Brett Baty was your starting third baseman. So it would have been negligence on David Stearns' his way of doing it to trade Brett Baty, knowing that he was going to be a third baseman. It would have been negligence on his part. So we might have got what we needed for Brett Baty, an extra starter, but how would that have looked amongst Met fans who thought Brett Baty after the Mauricio injury was going to be a third baseman? Nobody believed that Vientos could be this good. Not even offensively. Defensively is more shocking than his bat. Because I think a lot of us believed he can hit. It was just that, can he stay on the field and be serviceable as a defensive player? Well, he's been above and beyond that. So that's where I had a problem with people complaining that, well, you could have traded Brett Baty for Luzardo in the offseason. Well, yeah, it's hard to do that when your third baseman was Brett Baty. So I understand. But now, how do the Marlins perceive Brett Baty? Because I'll tell you this right now. If I go on the phone with the Marlins and they want Brett Baty for Tanner Scott, I will drive him to Miami myself. That's how quickly I do that. But I think it's going to take more, because Tanner Scott is an above-average reliever. He's a lefty. And when you've seen Hunter Harvey, who's probably a tick above Tanner Scott getting the number 2 overall prospect, you can assume that Tanner Scott's going to get somewhere in a prospect at least in the top 10, probably 5 through 10. So I ask again, are you willing to do that? Because I don't even think Brett Batty is considered a prospect anymore. He's kind of a in-betweener where he's kind of have a decent amount of Major League service time, and he's not really a minor leaguer, per se, prospect. So he's kind of in that no man's land. It's just a matter of Mets fans might not believe in him. The organization might not believe in him. But what if the Marlins still believe? No, the Marlins maybe don't care about elite talent. Maybe they look at the service time. Hey, Brett Batty got another 4 years left. Great. We don't have to pay him. Maybe it's just that. We could throw him in at third base and let it rip. Who knows? But the fact is, it's going to cost you. And do I believe Stearns is willing to do that? From a scale of 1 to 10, I say 6. Because I don't know how he perceives this farm system. He might not like some of these players that we all go goo goo gaga for. We might like Drew Gilbert. He might not. We might like Ryan Clifford. He might not. We love Jet Williams. He might not like them. And we go on and on and on. But if I do feel like he's going to make trades, it's going to be of the position players, position prospects that are going to get traded because he prioritizes the pitching in the farm, which is obvious at this point, at least to me, during this draft in 2024, which was the other night on Sunday. He drafted a tremendous amount of arms in this draft. The exact number, I think I have over close to 12, maybe more. More than half were arms, were pitchers, mostly in college, which is something that the Mets of the past, in the Eplers, in the Aldersons, and go on and on, usually it was high school pitchers and a lot of high school drafts or high school guys that were drafted. So if Stearns will trade to get bullpen arms, it's going to be position player prospects because he cannot try to get started pitching or, bullpen help and half-ass it. He can't. You can't lose out on every above average to premium arm because you weren't willing to go the extra mile to get that bullpen arm. Then you should have been straight up from the beginning that this was a complete transition year, regardless of how they perform here. That was not what he said. And that is not what Cohen said. And I would guarantee you, Steve Cohen will not let David Stearns completely stay pat and not help this bullpen. As much as Cohen wants David Stearns to cook and do what he got to do and run the organization, Steve Cohen is not going to sit back and allow this team that fought back when there's probably about less than 5% of this fan base believed in this team in May. And there was still a lot that did not believe early June that this team would ever be back to where they are or even close to where they are. Today, on July 17th, they are in a third wildcard spot by a game, a half a game behind the Cardinals, and 4 behind the Atlanta Braves. This is what they've done over 7 weeks. They proved to a lot of Mets fans who just jumped on the bandwagon and are on it and holding tight. The non-believers in this team are even starting to believe a little bit more in this team because this 7 weeks isn't just a little stretch. 7 weeks is near 50 games. That is more than almost half than what they played. And I go back to this because nobody wants to really look at it. The Mets in April were a 500 team, right? Some were surprised. Some were like, well, okay, not bad. May was terrible. June was excellent. July, pretty decent. So in 3.25 months, 3.5, let's say 3.5 months, the Mets have had one bad month out of three. 3.5. So if that isn't a sign of a good team, because everybody who likes to make the Yankees World Series champions already, their June was absolutely terrible, and they're still in a stretch where they're like 11 games on the 500 over like a 25-game period. So if you saying, oh, that's just a mirage from the Yankees, how can you say that about the Mets when, don't look at that, the losing that the Yankees have done over the last 28 games. But let's look really closely at the Mets 7.5 weeks, and that doesn't count. Like, it's hard to feel that this team isn't, and I talked about this, Chris talked about this a lot. We've said it in our season preview that we thought this was going to be a mid-80s win team. 85, I think, was Chris, and I was 87, right? We got laughed at in that season preview. We've got laughed at many times when we said it over the year. And it's very possible at this point. It is very possible. The Mets played 500 baseball the rest of the way out. They're at least 3 games over 500. So if they play even 3, 4, 5 games over 500 the rest of the way, that is 8 games over 500. And you're going to tell me 8 games over 500 isn't a second wild card at the very least, when nobody in that second wild card has been more than 5 games over 500? And the Braves have came back down to earth? So the way I see it, Stearns and Cohen says, prove it to me, and we'll take care of this. Well, the Mets have proved it. Now, again, there is 2 weeks left until the trade deadline. Still about 14 games, and you do got the Yankees. You do got the Braves for 4, which is extremely important, because if we go into that series 4 games or less behind the Braves for a first wild card spot, do you know how crazy this fan base will be? Knowing that if we take care of business against the Braves, we can be the first wild card at the end of July with 2 months left to go in the season. We go crazy. Crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Yes, I do apologize. I did see, yes, I did screw up the day. I noticed that once I looked at it. I did. You know what's funny? I looked at it and I wrote it down, and I knew it was a 4-game series. So I was like, oh yeah, no problem. And then I realized it said Friday. But you know what? There isn't a stream that doesn't have a typo. So yes, it's Friday through Monday, guys. That's my apologies. Friday through Monday. Yes, I know, but hey, at least I'm consistent. And hey, the Mets have been going on a crazy streak since I've been screwing up typos. So at least I got the record right. Hey, that's usually wrong. So yes, guys, sorry about that. It's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday is the series against the Marlins. That's my bad. Not Thursday through Sunday. I apologize. You know what? I should have realized that, because when I was doing this, it didn't make sense, because I know the Yankees are a 2-game series, and I'm like, why would the Mets be off on a Monday when they just came off the All-Star break? Of course, stupid me kind of thought about it and threw it out the window. But hey, there isn't a stream with Rob that doesn't have a typo. So I do apologize with that. And Paul, I do apologize as well. So, all right, guys. The Mets are 49-46. 4 games out of the first wild card, a game out of the second wild card, holding the third wild card by 1 game from the Diamondbacks and the Padres. Game and a half out of Pittsburgh. Now, I want to say one thing about this wild card, though. We talk about the deadline when it comes to the Mets, but we're not having a conversation about the rest of the wild card from, I would say, Cincinnati all the way down to the Rockies, the Marlins, the Nationals, the Cubs, the Giants. Because I think Pittsburgh's kind of hanging around there. So from the teams like Cincinnati, the 3 games, all the way down to the Rockies, right? That are not shown. The Marlins and the Rockies are not shown. But the Giants, the Reds, the Giants, the Cubs, the Nationals, Rockies, and Marlins. From Cincinnati to Washington, teams that either are already thinking about becoming sellers or on the verge of becoming sellers. Here's where this gets interesting. There might be 3 teams behind the Mets that might actually be contending for a wild card, not the 5 or the 6 we might think the Cubs might sell. The Giants might sell off some. Right? The Giants might sell off Michael Conforto. The Cubs might sell. The Reds might sell a couple of pieces. Right? And we already know the Nationals are. So if Cincinnati, the Giants, and the Cubs over this next 2 weeks kind of hang where they are and don't really make any progress, they're probably going to become sellers, or at least somewhat sellers, and acquire assets. So you can throw those teams out the window. Now all you got to worry about is Pittsburgh, San Diego, Arizona, St. Louis, and Atlanta. So 3 teams make it. 6 teams are fighting for 3 spots. And if you believe in Pittsburgh or not, let's say you do, 6 teams for 3 spots. Right? Some might believe the Arizona and San Diego are better than the Mets, but it doesn't really matter. It really doesn't. It's just a matter of who you beat and who you win. And that's the important thing. Because they have the tiebreaker against the Padres. I believe the Mets go to Arizona later in the year. Or did they do that? They already played there, right? I don't even remember anymore. I think they have the tiebreaker, or it's tied with Arizona. So they only have to worry about a couple of teams fighting for 3 spots. And who knows? The Pirates might say, you know what? We're just not there yet. If they have a rough week, maybe they become sellers too. And now all you got to worry about is Arizona, San Diego, St. Louis, and Atlanta. And the good news for the New York Mets is that who do they play the most out of those 4 teams? The Atlanta Braves. 10 games. 10 games against Atlanta still. That is where the Mets can really make progress overall in this wild card standings. Because every game you face a team that you're chasing or is behind you, and you face them a lot, it's like losing or winning 2 games when you win or lose those games. Because you gain a game in the win column, you gain a game in the loss column against that team. And again, we might be talking about in a Mets-Atlanta series at home, by the way, where the Mets could be within striking distance of taking over that first wild card if they have a good series against the Atlanta Braves. That series would be crazy amongst both fan bases. Mets fans would go insane during that series. And it's at home? Oh, man. That would be awesome. But we got to get there. 4 against the Marlins, 2 against the Yankees, and then the Braves come to town. So we're on the road for 4 against Miami, on the road for 2 against the Yankees. Then we drive to Queens to play 4 against the Atlanta Braves. This stretch of 10 games, which is basically leads you into the deadline, basically. If the Mets go 6-4, That's 2 extra games over 500. So they would be exactly 5 games over 500 if they go 6-4. And that's being modest. And even if they go 500, they remain 3 games over 500 if they go 500 during that stretch, which wouldn't be the worst thing. I would like more, but the Mets can't go less than 500. If it's 5-5 or better, take it and run. Take it and run. Because anything better than 500, you add games over 500 for us. And that's where you want to be. Okay, so we split. So it's going to come down to probably division record. When because after the head-to-head, it's division. How you did in your division, and I think that's how they go after that. There's so many different rules. I got to really look into it because it might matter. It really might matter, guys. So the important thing to look at is that by the next 10 games for the Mets and the next 10 games for the teams behind us. In particular, from Cincinnati, San Francisco, the Cubs, and Washington. Teams that probably, if they don't have a good week, are probably going to become sellers. You can throw those teams out the window trying to chase us. Now it's only 3 teams. I'm going to leave Pittsburgh in there because they fought back to 500, and now they're a game and a half out of a wild card spot. So I'm going to keep them in there because they play better. So you only got to worry about 5 teams. And you play one team more than any other team that you're fighting against. And that helps because you got Pittsburgh and the Cardinals. They're going to beat up on each other. You got Arizona and San Diego who's going to beat up on each other. What if one completely demolishes the other one? Well, that team falls on the wayside. So here's the thing. You got 2 NL East teams, 2 Central teams, and 2 West teams. So somebody is going to beat up on each other. Now, what you hope is that when team beats up on one another, you win so you don't lose ground on the team that's winning and you gain ground against the team that's losing. And that's why these games against Atlanta are extremely important. Not only for our wild card hopes, but of the chances that we have a better chance than St. Louis, Arizona, San Diego, and Pittsburgh to catch the Braves. Because all those teams have to win, and win while the Braves lose, and lose. The Mets play the Braves a lot. So they can gain ground because you beat that team. It's like 2 games. They have to win and hope the Braves lose. So it's kind of a give and take. With the whole Braves and Mets situation, it's straight win and you gain a full game and you don't got to worry about nothing because you're gaining on that one wildcard team. Unless the Cardinals or the Braves, the Padres or the Diamondbacks win at the same time, but you're not losing ground, you're gaining ground. So not only do you jump some other wildcard team, you jump closer to the Braves. And that's why the Mets are in a prime spot. Because the Padres and the Diamondbacks are both out of a wild card. They're going to beat each other up. So unless one team completely controls another, they're going to go back and forth. Pittsburgh and St. Louis, in this case, you want Pittsburgh to beat St. Louis in the Mets case. Because Pittsburgh is a game and a half behind the Mets. And you want to catch St. Louis. So you want Pittsburgh to win. So the dynamic here is the Mets are in prime spot because of who they have in front of them in the Braves and how much you play them. Now, it all matters for nothing if this 10-game stretch becomes a disaster. I don't believe it will. Because a disaster is 4-6 or worse. If you go 5-5 over this 10-game stretch, you're still 3 games over 500 a week before the deadline, which I think is more than enough to probably be within a game or a half a game or even in a wild card spot. If you do any better, you're getting further away from 500. On the plus side, you go 6-4, you're 4 games over 500. You go 7-3, 5 games. You know where I'm getting at here. Simple math. So on Friday, Mets, Marlins, start the second half. I put Luis Severino in that slot. I know I put Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's my bad. It's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. No Mets game tomorrow. So relax. Take a breather. Still the first half. It's break time. Relax. Sorry. But on Friday, I think Luis Severino is going to get the nod, which makes sense to me. Your best pitcher, you throw him out there. He hasn't pitched in like a week, maybe even longer than that. 9 days, if I'm not mistaken. So I think Severino's going to get the start on Friday. And then it's going to be whoever else Mendoza thinks should go. I would put Minaya after Severino, in my opinion. Then Quintana or Christian Scott, whichever one. I would say Quintana and then Christian Scott. So you're going to get your 4 guys in this game. And then we'll see how it works out when it comes to the Yankee games. So on Friday, second half begins 2 weeks before the deadline. 10 games over the Marlins, Yankees, and Braves that you see on your screen. That's all in 10 games. That 10 games takes you a few days before the trade deadline, where most things are probably going to go down. So in those 10 days, the Mets better be at least where they are record-wise, 3 games over. Or if it's worse, then buying and selling are up in the air, guys. But I don't believe that's going to happen. And it starts on Friday against the Marlins. So, guys, with that said, don't forget, Hector is doing a X Space with Anthony McCarron tonight on X. So make sure you tune in on X through the X Space, and you can listen in with his special guest tonight. Hopefully I'm up at least for a little bit of it before I have to go to sleep and go to work. But the Mets are in prime position to continue these next few weeks before the deadline and give no doubt to David Stearns that he has to be buyer at the deadline. In particular, bullpen. We'll see how that goes, guys. It's been a pleasure talking to you for the beginning of the second half. Thank you for tuning in to another rendition of Mets Talk Live right here on the channel. With that said, everybody have a great night. Let's go Mets. Happy second half. And let's go Mets. See you later, guys.